What's happening, everybody? Jim Laird joining you live from Managua, Nicaragua. Hope you're doing well. Getting a lot of pool time in. You can see we got the pool over here. Getting some pool time in this afternoon. Sundays are nice and chilled. Worked out this morning. That was a lot of fun. Sundays in Managua is like ghost town. It's really great. You can get anywhere super quickly. I try to keep any of my errand running for Sundays because everybody pretty much goes out of town, particularly this weekend with the holiday. Everyone's out of town, so the streets are almost deserted, and the gym is nice and empty. So I train on Sunday mornings and try and run a lot of my errands on the weekends when the traffic is insane. So I hope you're doing well today. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I don't really talk about supplements much or anything like that, even though I'm interested in those things. I come from a performance enhancement background in one of my younger days. Until I drove myself into the ground. I drove my body like a stolen car, mainly due to being able to keep myself propped up with different things. And that forced me, when I got colitis in my mid-30s, to kind of change my focus to health. I got kind of a little wake-up call there, and now my focus has been on health. But I still keep up to date on the performance stuff and then on supplements and things like that because one, I don't talk about them much and I don't promote them at all because I've seen the results that lifestyle change can get with people, particularly beginners and particularly people that have burned themselves out. And a lot of the hard chargers I work with are using a lot of supplements. A lot of them are an HRT, hormone replacement, a lot of those things. And those things definitely can be positive, definitely needed at some point, but you still have to take care of yourself. You still have to have foundational habits. I look at these supplements and different peptides and things like that as a tool. We don't really understand completely how a lot of them work, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But I follow people like Chris Masterjohn because he does a really good job of going over research. Guys like Chris Duffin, I follow him. I've been following him for years. I've known him for years. Chris does a really good job because he's not afraid to say, hey, we really didn't understand how this worked, and we might have been wrong about a few things. And I'll start with Chris. I was watching one of the videos from him on Rogan, him talking about coenzyme Q10. And if you ask somebody if you ask people in the health space about coenzyme Q10, it's like something everybody should be on. And he was talking about how the variability in dosages is just so wild. And it comes down to, with a lot of this stuff, is mitochondrial health and what kind of state is your mitochondria in. And if your mitochondria, depending on what your state your mitochondria in, is going to depend on the dose that you need of coenzyme Q10. He talked a lot about people that actually get worse health outcomes. And it's like that with anything. There's certain people that don't react well to certain foods. And, you've got that big curve, right? The bell curve where people are going to do really well over here. The people in the middle do okay. And then there's going to be a certain amount of people here that just have a horrible outcome. So I'm not saying write this stuff off completely, but it's interesting because if your mitochondria is not in a good place and you take a certain dosage of Q10, it make you worse. And a lot of people would never expect that. And then he also talked about outliers where he had a woman who essentially hadn't had a period in like almost 20 years. And based on her testing, her mitochondrial testing, he determined that she needed a super high dose of CoQ10. He put her on like 700 milligrams or something like that. And of course, you would want to do this under supervision of a doctor. Her period came back in a matter of days. So a lot of this stuff is dependent on the person. And that's why if you're going to do supplements, you're going to experiment with things. You try them one at a time, cycle them. That way, if there is a negative side effect, you notice it. Things like HRV are really, really critical for this. There's a fat burner, which really isn't a fat burner, that's been really popular in the last year. It's called Sloop, something like that. It's a supplement that's been pushed in the peptide space here in the last bodybuilding world in the last year. And they used to think it was a fat burner. It was like a stimulant. That's the way they actually thought it was. But it's kind of like a chip in your car. You put this chip in, and it basically boosts the fuel and air intake. And Chris Duffin was talking about, what happens. A lot of people were bragging about how much they sweat. Oh my gosh, I'm burning so much fat because I'm sweating. Well, it turns out that sweating and that heat is extra oxidative stress, because what happens is if your mitochondria is not functioning properly, that all that energy kind of gets backed up in the mitochondria and it ends up causing oxidative stress. So a lot of these people that have been taking the supplement for like the last year and sweating their asses off have been doing, I don't know how much harm, but it's not a good side effect. So a lot of times with a lot of these different supplements and a lot of these different peptides, we don't really understand the action, especially particularly with the mitochondria. This is something that we really don't understand in that great depth. So peptides in particular, one of the things that kind of, I'm not against them. I think they have a place, obviously under the supervision of a doctor. And a lot of the clients that come to me are on peptides or use peptides because they're hard chargers. They want to push the boundaries. The thing I worry about peptides is your body, when it produces peptides naturally, it has a very short window when it works. It turns on certain things and then it turns off. These peptides that they're manufacturing have a long, like they stay in the system for much longer and they leave things on longer than they normally would be on, like certain switches. And I won't get into the details. I'm more of a big idea guy, a principle guy. I'm not a detail person. I go to people like Master John and people like Duffin to get that kind of information, the breakdowns, or Dr. Jack Cruz or people like that. That's the thing that worries me about some of these peptides. So I'm going to be doing a YouTube video on this later, but this is kind of a warm up. If you are somebody that wants to experiment with some of this stuff, one, you want to get doctor supervision. Two, you want to get labs done before. If you're really serious, you'll get mitochondrial testing and see what the status of your mitochondria. That way you can kind of tailor some of this stuff. But I think using markers like HRV is a really good way. Like Chris talked about, if you're going to use something like Sloop, you'd want to watch your HRV, and all of a sudden if it tanks, you're not in a good place, or you get some of the negative side effects, and you can come off right away. And that's why I think it's important to try one or two of these things at a time and not be on like 10 or 15. There's a lot of people in the biohacking longevity space that are on thousands and thousands of dollars worth of supplements and peptides a month, and I think it's going to bite them on the ass. I think it's going to end up in time. I think you'll see, even though a lot of these people look amazing, look like Greek gods, like a lot of the bodybuilders that drop dead on stage. And by far, I'm not implying that this is going to happen or it should happen or that I want it to happen. But I think you're going to see that a lot of these people that are on the mega doses of supplements and all sorts of different things all the time are not going to have the outcomes. And I see this a lot with people that are on a lot of supplements. All of a sudden we take them off the supplements, their HRV goes up, their body's ability to handle stress goes up because the supplements are acting as a stressor, particularly certain compounds after 8 to 12 weeks. That's I learned that the hard way through my time in powerlifting and the performance realm, is that you cycle things that way. If there are negative side effects, your body has a chance to reset and re-heal, and so you're not constantly blasting yourself all the time. You need to let your body come back to normal. So I think in this space, I think a lot of these people that are on thousands of dollars worth of stuff are going to realize, 10, 15 years down the road, because your body I abused my body for a long time, for like almost 2 decades, 15 years before I had any I had lots of warning shots, like, getting sick, every 6 months or so, I couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days. But I think you'll see in the future that a lot of these people that are on all these supplements and peptides and all these different things, and I'm not saying they don't have a place, they definitely do, are going to have not the effects that they were wanting. So my advice to you would be, follow something like your HRV, follow your health markers, try 1 or 2 things at a time. Don't go adding like 8 or 10 different things in. If you are on a few things and you add something new, pay attention to what it does, so that way you can actually know how you feel. Because a lot of these people are on so many different things, they have no idea what's doing what. But in the end, the fundamentals, getting outside multiple times a day, getting the lights off at night, getting a protein at every meal, managing stress, going for walks, high quality water, having good social connection. That's the foundation. And then if you want to throw some tools in there, that's up to you and your doctor, to adhere to that risk and to take responsibility for yourself. So those are just my thoughts on that. I'm on here preaching about getting off your phone and managing screen time and all that, but the nerd in me loves, the internet, because the amount of information, like this information, 15, 20, 30 years ago would be very difficult to get, but now it's everywhere, and there's so much of it that a lot of people are just completely overwhelmed. And a lot of people that are on, they're doing the biohacks and all these things. Stress in particular is one that kicks them a lot. People will just not realize how hard they're pushing themselves, because it's not like physical manual labor. It's more emotional. It's more just chronic stress in your mind And that can be just as hard as physical stress, if even worse, because I think physical manual labor is very therapeutic to the body. I've noticed that in my own HRV readings and my own blood work, that when I'm doing a lot of low level manual labor, like when I'm coaching all day, I have better health outcomes and better I'm in a better place than if I'm on the computer all day doing calls, so it's interesting how that works. But there's just a few thoughts for you. I hope you're doing well today. I hope you was that Bo? Good to see you, man. I hope you have yourself a great day today. If you have any questions, of course, you can always DM me. I've had a lot of great questions about Nicaragua from my last few lives, and I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate if you give us a like or a comment. Have yourself a great day. Make sure you take the time to get outside, and we'll see you again soon.